Black woman cop gets death penalty. Then her German shepherd, does the unthinkable officer Naomi Briggs stood alone on the edge of the darkened street in Birmingham, Alabama, staring down the yellow police tape that divided her from the crime scene. The night was humid, thick with the smell of gunpowder and blood. Blue and red lights from patrol cars bounced off the brick walls of nearby buildings. Her German shepherd, Titan, sat loyally at her side, ears high, eyes locked on the alley. She clenched her jaw, her badge heavy on her chest, but her heart even heavier. She had responded first to the 911 call, a gunshot heard behind a rundown diner in the 5th Ward. But by the time backup arrived, a young white man was already dead, and she was standing over his body with her weapon drawn. Now they were calling it murder. Detective Carl Weston, her former partner, approached with an expression somewhere between suspicion and pity. "Naomi," he said, voice low, "what the hell happened here?" She didn't flinch. "I heard a scream, came around the corner. Saw someone running. I chased, but he disappeared into the lot. When I turned back, he was lying there. Bleeding out. I never fired my weapon." Weston gave a slow, skeptical nod. "And yet your fingerprints are on the shell casing. Your gun's missing 2 rounds, and witnesses say they saw you arguing with him earlier." Naomi narrowed her eyes. "You think I executed someone in uniform? In the middle of my shift?" He didn't answer. Titan let out a low growl, sensing Naomi's tension. Later that night, Naomi sat in an interrogation room at Precinct HQ. No lawyers, no backup. The room was cold. A single camera recorded everything. They told her she could waive her rights since she was a cop, that it was just protocol. But something was off. She could feel it. The silence in the station halls, the way her fellow officers wouldn't meet her eyes. Lieutenant Marcia Keyes walked in, lips pursed, file in hand. Naomi had known her for 8 years, trusted her even, but that night, Keyes sat across the table like a stranger. "They're charging you, Naomi," she said quietly. "Murder 1. Naomi blinked. "You're not serious. You've been suspended, effective immediately." "I didn't shoot him, Marcia. I want to believe that. But we found your gloves in the dumpster behind the scene, with blood that matches the victim. Surveillance footage shows you going into that alley alone, no one else visible, and ballistics already matched the bullet to your service weapon." Naomi gritted her teeth. Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "Someone planted that." Marcia looked down. "There's more." "What?" "The boy's father is Councilman Warren Boyd." Naomi's stomach dropped. That explained the rush, the spotlight, the headlines already leaking to local news outlets before forensics had even wrapped the scene. "He wants the death penalty." Naomi laughed bitterly. "Of course he does." She was processed that night. Mugshots. Fingerprints, her badge and weapon stripped. She was placed in solitary, allegedly for her own protection. But she knew the truth. She was being erased, silenced before she could even speak. Days passed. Her lawyer, a public defender who barely knew her name, recommended she take a plea deal, life without parole. Naomi refused. Her trial was fast-tracked, evidence was stacked, motives invented. The media turned her into a monster, but Naomi had one ally left, Titan. After her arrest, he was placed into a local K-9 holding facility. No one expected what he would do next. 3 nights before the trial began, Titan escaped. No one could explain how. The gate was locked. The cameras all conveniently went dark. But by morning, the cage was empty, and the entire staff was being questioned. Naomi didn't know about the escape yet. She sat in her cell, reading the letter from her younger brother, Elijah, a second-year law student who'd been desperately trying to prove her innocence. You didn't do this, the letter read, and I'm going to find a way to show it. I promise. She pressed the paper to her lips, but hope was fading fast. That night, in another part of town, a grainy security camera caught footage of a black German shepherd slipping into a gated backyard. The home belonged to Councilman Warren Boyd. The next morning, the footage was wiped from police servers within hours, but not before Elijah downloaded a copy. And not before Titan did something no one could have predicted. Inside that house, something had shifted. Titan hadn't attacked. He hadn't barked, but when Councilman Boyd woke up, the back door was wide open, muddy paw prints led to his office, and his safe, the one behind the false wall, had been opened. 2 hours later, Elijah received a mysterious package with no return address. Inside was a flash drive, and on it, documents, emails, and surveillance footage. Proof that Naomi had been framed. And worse, proof that the dead boy, Kyle Boyd, had been involved in a trafficking ring his father was trying to cover up. But Elijah couldn't just release it. The files were encrypted. He needed time, and Naomi didn't have much left. That evening, Naomi was moved to maximum security, and the prosecutor, District Attorney Dana Kruger, announced she would be seeking capital punishment. When Naomi was told, she stared out the window of her new cell. Sunset was bleeding across the Alabama sky. She whispered, "Titan, if you can hear me, don't stop." And in the shadows, her dog was still moving. Still searching. Still protecting. Naomi Briggs sat in her cell, the cold concrete walls pressing in on her. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow that did nothing to warm the chill in her bones. She stared at the letter from her brother, Elijah, the words blurring as tears welled in her eyes. "You didn't do this," the letter read. "I'm going to find a way to prove it." She folded the letter carefully, tucking it into the waistband of her prison-issued pants. The guards had taken everything else, her badge, her dignity. But they couldn't take this. Across town, Elijah sat hunched over his laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating his determined face. The flash drive he'd received contained a trove of encrypted files. He'd been working tirelessly to decrypt them, his mind racing with possibilities. Suddenly, a breakthrough. A folder opened, revealing a series of emails between Councilman Boyd and an unknown recipient. The messages detailed a plan to frame Naomi, to cover up his son's involvement in a trafficking ring. Elijah's heart pounded as he read, the implications sinking in. He picked up his phone, dialing a number he hadn't called in years. "Detective Weston," the voice answered. "Detective, this is Elijah Briggs. I have information that could exonerate my sister." There was a pause. "I'm listening." Back at the prison, Naomi was escorted to the warden's office. The guards flanked her, their grips firm on her arms. She was seated across from Warden Harris, a stern man with a reputation for being unyielding. "Officer Briggs," he began, "we've received new evidence pertaining to your case. You're being transferred to a secure facility for further evaluation." Naomi's eyes narrowed. "What kind of evidence?" "I'm not at liberty to say," he replied. As she was led out, Naomi's mind raced. This could be a chance to clear her name, or another trap. Meanwhile, Titan prowled the streets, his instincts guiding him. He'd escaped the K-9 facility, his loyalty to Naomi driving him forward. He followed a scent trail, leading him to a warehouse on the outskirts of town. Inside, he found a group of men loading crates into a truck. Titan recognized one of them, an officer from the precinct. He growled low, the hairs on his back standing up. The men turned, startled. "What the hell?" one of them exclaimed. Titan lunged, his powerful jaws clamping down on the man's arm. Chaos erupted as the others scrambled, trying to subdue the dog. Amidst the commotion, Titan grabbed a duffel bag from the truck and bolted into the night. He returned to Elijah's apartment, dropping the bag at his feet. Elijah opened it, revealing documents, photos, and a burner phone. His eyes widened as he realized the significance. "This is it," he whispered. "This is the proof we need." He contacted Detective Weston, arranging a meeting. Together, they reviewed the evidence, their expressions grim. "This goes deeper than we thought," Weston said. "We need to act fast." They formulated a plan to present the evidence to the district attorney, hoping to halt Naomi's transfer and reopen the investigation. At the secure facility, Naomi sat in a sterile room, her hands cuffed to the table. An officer entered, placing a file in front of her. "You're being released," he said. "New evidence has come to light." Naomi's heart soared. "What evidence?" He smirked. "Let's just say your dog is more resourceful than we gave him credit for." As she was escorted out, Naomi spotted Titan waiting outside, his tail wagging. She knelt, embracing him, tears streaming down her face. "You saved me," she whispered. Together they walked into the sunlight, ready to face whatever came next. Naomi hadn't seen the sky in nearly 9 months. The sunlight felt surreal on her skin, too bright and too warm for a world that had condemned her to die. She stood on the steps of the courthouse, staring at the city that had nearly forgotten her. Titan sat beside her, alert as always, like he knew the fight wasn't over. "Let's get this straight," she said softly to the German shepherd. "But we're not free yet." Inside the courthouse, District Attorney Carla Mendoza was in a war room of her own. Papers and files covered every inch of the table as she paced. "This case is about to explode," she told her assistant, a young, nervous man named Tyler. "You don't frame a decorated black officer for murder without leaving fingerprints, and whoever set her up had help from the inside." Detective Weston arrived moments later with Elijah and the bag Titan had recovered. Mendoza scanned the photos. Illicit meetings between Councilman Boyd and Commander Russo, cash envelopes, surveillance blackouts. Her stomach tightened as she flipped through evidence that made her question everything she believed in. "Commander Russo?" she asked, glancing up. "Head of Internal Affairs," Weston confirmed. "He oversaw Naomi's investigation, pushed it through in record time. That would explain the sealed records and the lack of forensics review." Mendoza sighed. He buried it. Back outside, Naomi and Elijah walked toward a nondescript black SUV. Inside was Captain Denise Holloway, Naomi's old partner, who'd been suspended after questioning the department's rush to convict her. "I pulled some favors," Holloway said as she handed Naomi a burner phone. "You're being watched." "But they don't know I'm back in the game." Naomi stared at her. "Why now?" "Because I've seen too many good cops get crushed. And you're not going down for something you didn't do." That night, Naomi stayed in a safe house just outside the city, watching the news coverage of her release. Public opinion was divided. Some hailed her survival as a miscarriage of justice being corrected. Others called it a political stunt. "What are you going to do?" Elijah asked as he set a cup of coffee on the table. Naomi looked at the wall, where photos of Boyd, Russo, and others were pinned like a map of corruption. "I'm going to burn the whole thing down." "But legally, by the book." Titan barked, startling them both. "What's wrong with him?" Elijah asked. Naomi crouched down. "He's pointing. Titan doesn't bark without a reason." A minute later, a black van passed slowly in front of the house. Tinted windows, no plates. Naomi's voice was calm. "Pack up, now." They barely had time to grab the essentials before the first flashbang shattered the front window. Smoke filled the room. Titan lunged toward the door, snarling. Naomi grabbed Elijah and dragged him through the back. The safe house erupted behind them as gunfire cracked through the night. "We were compromised," Naomi said breathlessly as they ran through the woods. "Someone knew where I was." Elijah panted beside her. "How the hell?" Naomi stopped, her eyes fierce. "There's a mole, someone close." By morning, they'd regrouped at an abandoned diner Captain Holloway had used years ago for undercover operations. Naomi stitched a cut on Elijah's arm while Titan lay beside them, growling at every creak in the floorboards. "We can't keep reacting," Elijah said. "We need to go on the offensive." Naomi nodded. "You up for it?" He hesitated. "You're asking a software engineer to take on dirty cops, politicians, and federal cover-ups." Naomi gave a tired smile. "I'm asking my brother." They devised a plan. Elijah would leak snippets of the evidence anonymously through independent journalists, slowly building pressure on Boyd and Russo. Meanwhile, Naomi would reappear in public, show she wasn't hiding, that she wasn't afraid. The next morning, the city woke to headlines screaming, "Evidence surfaces in Naomi Briggs' case," and "Was Officer Briggs framed by internal affairs?" Boyd held a press conference, visibly sweating. "These rumors are baseless. I have full confidence in our justice system," he said, voice tight. Backstage, his aide whispered, "Sir, someone's leaking more." "They know about the warehouse." His face turned pale. Later that day, as Naomi sat in an old cafe downtown with Holloway, a woman in a red coat slid into the booth across from her. "You don't know me," she said. "But I worked in Commander Russo's office, and I saw everything." Naomi leaned in. "Why now?" "Because I saw what they did to you. And I can't live with it." She pulled out a flash drive. "This is surveillance footage. You didn't shoot that suspect. He was dead before you got there." Naomi clenched her fists as Holloway took the drive. "Thank you," Naomi said, voice cracking. As the woman left, Holloway whispered, "This changes everything." Naomi stared out the window, her reflection strong and unshaken. "They're going to regret what they did," she said. Titan lifted his head, and the war, now personal, had only just begun. The footage was damning, grainy but clear. Naomi stood just outside the abandoned warehouse where the supposed suspect had been found dead, a full 5 minutes after a tall man, later confirmed as a federal agent, had entered and fired a single shot. And yet, in her trial, that clip had never seen the light of day. Naomi sat silently in the back of Holloway's truck, watching the video again and again. Her jaw clenched tighter each time. Titan rested his head on her lap, sensing her fury simmering under the surface. "How many people buried this?" she whispered. Holloway, driving through back roads to avoid city surveillance, spoke without turning her head. "Enough to hang a dozen careers. Then we don't stop until we bury all of them." Meanwhile, Carla Mendoza was playing a dangerous game. She'd leaked the footage to a trusted journalist from the Beacon, an independent outlet with no ties to the city's law enforcement or political apparatus. By noon, the footage went viral. The public, already divided, erupted. Protests reignited, this time louder, angrier, and more demanding. "How do you explain this?" a reporter shouted at Councilman Boyd during a live interview. This is taken out of context," Boyd stammered, his PR handler whispering frantically in his ear. "They're closing in on us," Commander Russo barked over the phone that same hour. "I warned you we should have shut her down when we had the chance." Boyd hissed, "Don't call me on this line again." But it was too late. The cracks were showing. Naomi's face was everywhere now, no longer as a convicted killer, but as the survivor of a political and legal takedown. Still, for Naomi, it wasn't enough. That evening, she and Holloway returned to the city under new identities. Elijah, now working from a secured server in an underground media lab, tracked down something bigger, a set of sealed court orders that proved evidence in Naomi's case had been suppressed by a judge on Russo's payroll. Naomi burst into the room as Elijah loaded the documents. "Tell me you found what I think you found." Elijah looked up, eyes wide. "Judge Selman. He ordered the footage inadmissible before it was even submitted. And he has a history of doing this." Naomi swallowed. "How much do you trust your source?" "Enough to bet your life on it." Naomi paused. "That's not funny." Elijah shook his head. "I'm not joking. They had the evidence now, but how to use it?" "We go to the feds," Holloway said. Naomi shook her head. "Not yet. The ones here are already compromised." "You're suggesting what? A press conference?" "No, something they won't expect. We turn this into a trial of public opinion." The next day, Naomi and her team uploaded a video. Her face appeared, calm but fierce. Titan sat beside her. "I was sentenced to die," she said into the camera. "Not because I was guilty, but because I made the wrong people nervous. Because I wore a badge and still dared to hold other people in power accountable. Today I'm giving the people the truth they were denied." She laid out the facts, piece by piece. The corruption, the lies, the cover-up. She didn't beg for sympathy. She demanded justice. The video spread like wildfire. Within hours, it topped every trending feed in the country. Major networks picked it up. The pressure on City Hall reached a boiling point. Inside a smoky bar across town, Russo watched the broadcast in silence. His phone buzzed. "Private number." "Do you realize what she just did?" the voice growled. "She's just one woman," Russo snapped. "No," the voice replied. "She's the match, and you're sitting on the powder keg." That night, someone tried to break into Carla Mendoza's home. They failed, but the message was clear. Someone didn't want this case reopened. Carla moved to a hotel under federal protection. "We need to talk," she texted Naomi. The meeting happened in a church basement. No cameras, no trackers. "You've got about 48 hours before they come at you with everything they have," Carla said. Naomi nodded. "Then we bring it all down before they get the chance." "Are you sure?" Carla asked. "This doesn't end with a slap on the wrist. You're talking about taking out a network that reaches from judges to federal agents." Naomi stood, her voice cold and steady. "They threw me in a cage and tried to kill me. They don't get to walk away." As they left the church, Titan froze, ears twitching. "Someone's here," Naomi whispered. A shadow moved across the far wall. She reached for the concealed pistol at her hip. Then a voice called out, "I come in peace." A man stepped forward, late 40s, suit and tie. He held up a badge, Federal Bureau of Investigation. "Agent James Whitaker, we've been watching the same people. And you've stirred a hornet's nest." Naomi narrowed her eyes. "Are you here to help, or clean up the mess?" "That depends," he said slowly, "on whether you're ready to take the fight to Washington." Naomi glanced at Titan, then back at Whitaker. "I've been ready." The rules of the game had changed. The players were out in the open now. And Naomi was about to take the next move in a war none of them saw coming. The safe house was quiet, but Naomi couldn't sleep. She sat in the corner, her back against the wall, watching Titan breathe steadily at her feet. Outside, the night hummed with tension. Too much had happened too fast. The video, the whistleblower judge, the encounter with Whitaker. And now they were planning a takedown that could either restore justice or burn everything to the ground. Holloway walked in, carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee. She handed one to Naomi without saying a word. They drank in silence, the weight of what they were about to do pressing down on both of them. "He's waiting downstairs," Holloway finally said. Naomi stood. "Let's hear what the Fed has to say." Downstairs, Agent James Whitaker was reviewing a digital map on his laptop. Dots lit up like a constellation, each representing a compromised official, a judge, a cop, a prosecutor. The sheer scale of it made Naomi's stomach twist. "You weren't exaggerating," she said, crossing her arms. "This is the skeleton of an old machine," Whitaker replied. "And you rattled the bolts. They're panicking." "What do they know so far?" "They know you're alive. And that you're not staying quiet." "Let me guess," Holloway said, leaning against the table. "They're not planning a counter-press conference." Whitaker shook his head. "They want to disappear you. Permanently. And anyone helping you." Naomi met his gaze. "Then we go first." "What's the most explosive proof we can drop?" Whitaker tapped a folder on his screen. "I intercepted a wiretap from Russo. He mentions a payment made to Judge Selman. Over 200 grand wired through a dummy charity. And there's more. Records of similar transfers to other city officials, all tied to your case." Naomi exhaled, her fists clenched. "And you've sat on this?" "I needed the right moment," he said. "And the right person." She shot him a hard look. "Don't make me regret trusting you." "You already lit the fuse, Naomi. I'm just trying to help you aim it." They agreed on the plan. A public briefing streamed live from a secure location, with Whitaker and Naomi presenting the evidence together. It wasn't just about her anymore. This was about systemic corruption and accountability, pulling back the curtain on a system too many people thought was untouchable. The next morning, Holloway arranged the tech setup. Elijah patched into a secure line and began notifying trusted journalists and activists. Carla Mendoza, who had been hiding under federal watch, agreed to co-host the live stream. Her name added weight, especially after the attempt on her life. 2 hours before the broadcast, Titan started pacing. Naomi watched him carefully. He was trained to detect tension, movement, the unnatural energy of a threat approaching. And something had him on edge. Just then, the lights flickered. Elijah's voice came through the comms. "We've got company. Surveillance drone just spotted 3 black SUVs half a block out." Whitaker cursed. "They moved faster than I expected." "Too late to relocate," Naomi said. "We finish what we started." "No!" Holloway snapped. "We need to get you out now." Naomi stepped in front of her. "They put a death sentence on me. I won't live in hiding again." Outside, tires screeched. Inside, Naomi turned to Titan and whispered, "Stay with me." The live stream began. Carla opened it, her voice clear and firm, despite the nerves in her eyes. She introduced Naomi as a decorated officer, framed and nearly executed for a crime she didn't commit. Then Whitaker walked viewers through the evidence, money trails, deleted footage, intercepted calls. Naomi spoke last. "I was labeled a killer," she said. "But I'm here, alive, because the people who tried to silence me underestimated something. Not just me, but the fact that truth has a way of clawing its way back to light, no matter how deep you bury it." At that exact moment, the power cut out. "Backup generators kicked in," Elijah called. "We're still live." "They tried to jam us." Shots rang out near the back entrance. Holloway pulled her sidearm and shouted, "They're breaching!" Whitaker and Carla were rushed into the panic room. Elijah stayed at the control board, streaming until the last second. Naomi grabbed Titan and headed toward the basement tunnel, a narrow path dug during Holloway's military days. She could hear footsteps on the floor above, boots searching, They exited into a narrow alley. A man lunged from the shadows. Titan reacted first. In a flash, he slammed into the man's chest, knocking him flat and pinning him with a vicious growl. "Do not move," Naomi snapped, aiming her gun. The man froze, staring up at her. "Wait. I'm not with them. I'm here to help." Naomi narrowed her eyes. "Prove it." He slowly pulled out a press badge. "Greg Toller. I work for the Sentinel. I've been investigating Russo for 3 years. I saw the stream. I know a safe place." Naomi stared for a moment. "Then get up and lead the way. But know this, if you're lying, my dog won't ask questions." Titan let out a low rumble, as if understanding every word. They vanished into the city just as the agent stormed the safe house. But it was too late. The video had already gone viral. A city once asleep had finally opened its eyes, and those who had silenced Naomi were about to face a storm of their own making. The fallout was instant. Within hours of the live stream, every major news outlet was running segments titled "Framed Cop Speaks Out" and "Federal Agent Confirms Corruption in Naomi Cross Case." Social media exploded. Hashtags with Naomi's name trended globally. People demanded answers, accountability, justice. But not everyone was applauding. Inside a high-rise office in downtown Atlanta, Councilman Russo slammed his fist into the wall. "You said she was dead," he screamed at a trembling man in a tailored suit. "She was. The injection went through." "We had doctors." Russo grabbed him by the collar. "Then explain to me how she just blew up my career in a live stream viewed by 4 million people. His phone rang. It was Judge Selman. "We need to shut this down now," Selman said, panicked. "Do you understand? If she starts naming names, she already did," Russo snapped. "She showed the money trail, the tapes, all of it." There was silence on the other end, then a flat voice. "Then we finish what we started. No more half measures." Naomi, meanwhile, had taken shelter in an abandoned train yard on the outskirts of the city. Greg Toller, the journalist, had led them through back roads and derelict tunnels to get there. Titan stayed close, hyper-aware of every sound. "This place used to be part of the old freight system," Greg explained. "My uncle worked here for decades. No one comes anymore. No one but ghosts." Naomi scanned the darkness, her instincts never fully relaxing. "Ghosts are the least of my worries." Greg sat on a crate, setting down his backpack. "I've been tracking Russo for years, ever since my sister's case." Naomi looked up. "What happened?" "He framed her for armed robbery. She worked at a non-profit that exposed how his real estate firm was illegally evicting low-income families. She went to prison for 4 years before the evidence came out." "By then, she'd lost everything." Naomi nodded slowly. "So, you're not just chasing a story." Greg's eyes burned. "No. I want to burn his empire to the ground." Suddenly, Holloway's voice buzzed through Naomi's encrypted comm. "They froze the accounts tied to the whistleblower fund, and Whitaker's been pulled off the case." "He's in hiding." Naomi's stomach dropped. "They're cutting off our lifelines." "And that's not all," Holloway said. "A memo just leaked. They're reinstating the death sentence, claiming the live stream was AI generated and that you escaped custody." Naomi clenched her jaw. "They're doubling down." Greg stood. "We need to fight back louder, stronger. I have a contact inside the Bureau of Judicial Oversight. He's been sitting on sealed records, files they didn't want getting out." "What kind of files?" "Internal memos, names of law enforcement officials flagged for corruption but never prosecuted. Naomi, your case was just the tip of the iceberg." She nodded. "Then we make it collapse." Before dawn, Naomi, Greg, and Titan moved to an abandoned substation where Elijah had managed to re-establish a secure connection. The files were massive, damning. Dozens of names. Secret settlements, suppressed reports. And at the center of it all, Councilman Russo and Judge Selman. Naomi opened a new video channel. Her voice, calm but intense, filled the screen. If you believed I was dead, they wanted it that way. If you thought justice was blind, I'm here to tell you she's just been gagged and shackled. I won't stop until every last name behind my execution order is exposed. Titan let out a low growl, as if in agreement. Suddenly, a crashing noise shattered the silence. Naomi spun around, gun raised. A figure stumbled into the room, bleeding from the shoulder. It was Whitaker. "They tried to kill me," he said, panting. "I barely made it out, but I got something." He pulled a drive from his pocket. "This," he gasped, "is the sealed footage of your supposed execution. It shows everything. The tampering, the switch, the falsified records." Naomi stared at him. "And if we show it? They'll have to face it." "All of it." But just as she inserted the drive into the system, Greg's phone buzzed. He read the message. His face turned pale. "What is it?" Naomi asked. Greg swallowed. "Your mother." "They've taken her. Russo's people." Naomi froze. "They're baiting you. Telling you to surrender yourself, or she dies." Everything inside her turned to ice. She had faced betrayal, death, humiliation. But this was unforgivable. She looked at Titan, then at the drive, then at Greg. "No more running," she said, her voice low and cold. "We end this now." Naomi's pulse thundered in her ears. The minute she heard the words, "They've taken your mother," the world around her dimmed to a single sharp point. Every instinct she had, the training, the discipline, flooded to the surface. Greg paced the room, his voice low and urgent. "We can't just storm in without a plan. That's exactly what they want." "She's all I've got left," Naomi said, her voice steel. "And they know that." Whitaker, nursing his shoulder, sat on a crate, trying to keep his breathing steady. "We have the footage. We have the files. We take this public now before they erase everything." Naomi's mind raced. She glanced down at Titan, who stood rigid, as if sensing something was coming. "What if we split them?" she said. "Create a diversion they can't ignore. You push out the evidence through every possible outlet, media, whistleblower networks, internal affairs. Meanwhile, I go in and get her." Greg frowned. "That's suicide." "No," she replied. "That's justice." Within hours, they executed the plan. Holloway tapped into dormant communication systems to blast the footage across encrypted networks. Greg coordinated with an underground team of activists who began projecting Naomi's video testimony onto buildings across Atlanta. The city became a theater of exposure. Naomi dressed in all black, combat gear tight and unmarked. Her badge was long gone, but her purpose had never been clearer. With Titan by her side, she moved like a shadow through back alleys, hopping fences, disappearing into darkness. They tracked her mother to a private residence owned by a shell company linked to Russo. Naomi scoped the perimeter, then quietly neutralized the guards on the west side. She slid through a side window, every step practiced, silent. Inside, the house reeked of arrogance, rich wood, leather, expensive art. But she only had one target, the locked room at the end of the hall. She placed a hand on the door. Titan growled softly. Then she heard her mother's voice. Weak but alive. "Naomi." Her heart tightened. She kicked the door in. Her mother was tied to a chair, bruised but breathing. A man stood over her with a gun. "Don't," he warned, aiming it at Naomi. Titan lunged before he could finish his sentence. The man screamed as the dog knocked him down, teeth clamped on his arm. Naomi moved fast, grabbing the weapon, neutralizing him with one blow. She ran to her mother, frantically untying the ropes. "Mom, I've got you. We're getting out of here." Her mother, eyes glassy, whispered, "I knew you were alive." "I never stopped believing." Naomi hugged her tight, but time was short. Suddenly, explosions rocked the house. Outside, lights flashed. Armed units were closing in. "They're here," Greg's voice crackled through the comm. "They traced the data leak. You've got 5 minutes, maybe less." Naomi helped her mother to her feet. "Can you walk?" "I'll run if I have to," her mother said, with a fierce glint Naomi hadn't seen in years. They made their way to the back exit, but the yard was crawling with Russo's private security. Titan took position. Naomi knew what was coming. "I'll draw them away," she said. "Mom, when I say go, you run with Titan. He'll take you to Greg." "I'm not leaving you," her mother snapped. "You have to. If I don't make it, the world needs to know what they did." "Promise me." Tears welled in her mother's eyes. "I promise." Naomi stepped out, hands raised. Instantly, rifles turned on her. Russo himself walked out of the shadows, smiling. "Well, well, like a ghost rising from the grave." "You're running out of places to hide, Councilman," Naomi said. He laughed. "Still talking tough? You think the world believes your little show?" "They've seen it." "They've seen everything. You're done." His smile dropped. "No." "You're done." He raised his hand, and that's when the lights cut out. Sudden gunfire. Smoke grenades. From the darkness, Elijah's team emerged, masked and precise. In seconds, the yard was chaos. Naomi grabbed her mother's hand. "Now!" Titan charged ahead, leading the way through the trees. Behind them, the house erupted into gunfire and flames. They ran until they reached an SUV waiting down the hill. Greg was behind the wheel. Naomi threw open the door. "Drive!" As they sped off, Naomi looked back one last time. The empire of lies was burning, but she knew it wasn't over yet. One more move remained, and it would shake the entire system. Naomi stood in front of the Georgia Supreme Court building, her boots still caked in mud from the night before. Titan sat loyally by her side, his head high, chest puffed, calm but alert, like he knew this moment was bigger than either of them. Her mother stood close, supported by Greg and Whitaker, all battered but unbroken. The entire square in front of the courthouse buzzed with press, protesters, and curious onlookers. Screens around the city looped the footage from Holloway's data leak. It showed everything. Russo's illegal surveillance operations, the fabricated evidence, the hush money, and worst of all, the execution orders signed behind closed doors to silence dissenters like Naomi. Now the world knew Naomi Pierce's name, the black woman who was framed, imprisoned, sentenced to death, and survived. The former cop who once believed in the system, only to be betrayed by it. Inside the courtroom, every seat was filled. Judges sat at the bench with stone faces, the tension in the air as heavy as concrete. Naomi walked in wearing the uniform she hadn't worn since the day she was arrested, cleaned and pressed. Her badge, now returned to her by the new Internal Affairs chief, gleamed at her side. She stood at the podium. "I was trained to protect and serve," she began. "But the system I served decided I was more dangerous than the crimes I tried to stop, not because I broke the law, but because I wouldn't ignore it being broken by the people at the top." The courtroom was silent, hanging on her every word. "So for months, I was hunted, silenced, imprisoned. They called me a traitor. They called me unstable. But the truth is, I was never unstable. I was inconvenient." She paused, her eyes burning into Russo, now seated as a defendant in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed. He looked pale, smaller than she remembered. Power stripped from him like old paint. "You sentenced me to die," she said directly to him. "But I lived. And now everyone sees who the real criminals are." She turned back to the judges. "I don't stand here to reclaim my badge. I stand here to demand accountability. Not just for me, but for every voice that's been silenced, every life destroyed by a justice system that forgets its own name." A quiet murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Naomi stepped down. Her job was done. The verdict came quickly. Russo was sentenced to life in federal prison without parole. Several of his co-conspirators were arrested within hours. A full state investigation into wrongful convictions was launched. The death penalty protocols in Georgia were suspended pending federal oversight. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks later, Naomi stood at a new podium, this time at the Department of Justice in D.C. She'd been appointed special advisor to a national task force on criminal reform. Her mother watched from the front row, eyes gleaming with pride. Titan was now a certified PTSD support dog for exonerated officers and victims of police misconduct. Naomi closed her speech with the same words she'd once whispered to herself in a prison cell. "They thought killing me would end the truth. But sometimes it takes a bullet dodged and a dog that won't stop fighting to show the world what justice really looks like." The crowd stood in thunderous applause. Back home, Greg uploaded the final video to their YouTube channel, an extended docu-series called The Last Witness, the story of Naomi Pierce. As the video ended, his voice came over the screen. "If this story moved you, if it made you think or made you angry, don't let it stop here. Subscribe to the channel, share Naomi's story, help us keep exposing the truth. Because no one should have to die just to be heard." And for the first time in a long time, Naomi smiled, not just because she had survived, but because now the whole world was listening.